Okay. This is a special. We're having a special edition today. It's not Friday. Usually I do this on Fridays, but Wednesday, probably once a month, I'm doing like a special something. Because I think it's probably time that I do this. Over the last week, I've been doing sessions, training sessions, workshops, some with attorneys and some just with my agents, and a combination of both. And what we've been going over is what you're seeing here. And I think what's really important is that I give you kind of a little bit of a behind the scenes look at what takes place. It's really crucial that we understand the contract as realtors, obviously as a broker. Obviously, attorneys put these together, but I think it's important to know what's going on. So what I want to give everybody today is a little bit of insight. I don't necessarily want to put you to sleep. So I want to make sure that I give you just like a little bit of a bird's eye view as to what has taken place with the real estate contract, the Florida real estate contract. Now, this is the FAR bar. This is not the as is. This is the FAR bar contract. There's two different contracts in Florida. One's the FAR bar, right? Florida Real Estate and Bar Association's real estate contracts, and the as is. We're not going to talk about the as is really too much. What I will tell you is for the people, and this is more for buyers and sellers. I know some realtors tend to watch this as well, but remember that typically with the FAR bar contract, it's a little bit more in favor of sellers in a way, because it does not allow as much of a loophole to get out of a contract as the as is does. Now I know it's a little bit counterintuitive. I mentioned this in a past video, but and I don't want to get into that too deeply, but there is a difference, and there is a little bit of it's a little bit of an advantage for sellers in this particular contract in the FAR bar. So we're going to go over some of the changes that have taken place inside this particular deal and inside this particular contract. So we're going to begin with, let me show you this. Let's go through the revisions here. And I think what you're going to see is in the revisions, number one, you're going to see mortgage. There's some mortgage revisions. I think you're going to see that. You're going to see some revisions on, I wouldn't say revisions, but you're going to see some differences inside, the dates, the way things are maybe verbalized, and the way they are actually written in the contract. So actually what I want to do is, this is actually you're looking at the summary page. I really do want to open up into the contract part that I want to share with you, right? So we're going to look at the contract part. That's actually the summary page there. And I want to share with you some of the contract verbiage that we're going to actually look at. So let's take a look at this. This is the form I want us to look at. So the first thing I want to share with you is probably the biggest change, and especially here in the villages, sometimes we see the issues with mailbox keys. Like that's like a real deal. Like, it may sound like a small element, but people get sensitive about their mailbox keys. Like that's a legitimate concern for many people. Mailbox keys, and specifically when we're talking about mailbox keys, supposed to have two mailbox keys. That's what's supposed to be delivered to the buyer. So that is actually included in the contract, as well as some other fixtures that may not have been mentioned, but was assumed. And for instance, doorbells, thermostats, you would think you would take a thermostat or a doorbell. What had happened? And then everybody's left with holding the bag, and the seller's got their money, and there's not much the buyer can do. So be aware of some of these changes if you're buying or selling. These are some of the things that you're protected by if you're a buyer, or you're obligated to provide as a seller. Television wall mounts, those types of things. So that's a new change as of November 1, by the way, of this year, 2021. So that's one thing. Another thing that is I want to bring to everybody's attention is the word collected. In the sales contract, and by the way, whenever you're working with a buyer, whenever you're working with a realtor, make sure that you have an understanding of the sales contract, whether they're going to recommend an as-is contract or a non-as-is FAR bar contract. understand the differences, understand what you're getting into, and perhaps before you start shopping or right after you put your home on the market, if you're a seller, make sure you've got an understanding as to what the terms are in the sales contract. I'd recommend that if you do need to see an attorney. I'm not one, but if you do need to see one, then to review it, there are attorneys that will do buyer reviews, contract reviews for you. So that's an option. And if you do want some recommendations there, just give me a call at 352-572-3796, 352-572-3796. When we're looking at this is actually page one of the contract. Collected means when the title company or the closing agency actually gets the funds, not when the seller gets the money in a closing. So know that there's a difference there. Also know, and I'm going through this, obviously, when I went through this with my agents a couple of times over the last couple of weeks, it took about an hour and a half to 2 hours to do, and we did this in much more detail. But for you, I just want to give you some basic working knowledge, and I don't want to put you to sleep either. So we have to remember that. So on this line here, remember that you have the option of making a deal. You can pay cash for a property and you would check mark this box, cash transaction. Or if you were going to get financing, but you don't want to have a financing contingency to make it a quote unquote a cleaner contract, you can check mark this box. That is an option for you. So a couple of things that maybe as someone in the public that's not a realtor or a broker or involved in real estate a lot, maybe you didn't know that, but that is a possibility. A lot of changes here on loan approvals and mortgage, that type of thing. The biggest thing I want to really make you aware of is that make sure that you are doing your due diligence with the mortgage companies, the banks. Make sure that you are uh, doing your applications, turning in what they're requesting. And normally we're talking about a 30-day approval period, which is in the contract. Make sure that you're doing everything in your power to give the mortgage company or bank, the people that are lending the money, everything they need so they can get you a loan approval by 30 days. And 30 days after effective date, one thing that's in the contract is it's all based on calendar days, not business days, calendar days, 30 calendar days. So from the time that the buyer and seller agree on everything and it's written that we have agreed on November 3rd, 30 days from that period is when loan approval is due. Make sure that you are communicating with your bank. Make sure that your bank is communicating with your buyer's agent, because that time period of 30 days, one of the big changes here in this particular contract in Florida here, whether you're buying in, the villages or surrounding areas, ocala, doesn't matter where in Florida, you got to make sure that the listing agent, AKA the seller, is aware of your approval or disapproval. You didn't get the mortgage. So make sure that that is a thing. Make sure you understand that. Okay. That's a very important thing. The other thing is we're crossing over. This is actually important for foreign sellers. If you're not a U.S. citizen, make sure you understand FIRPTA law, right? That has to do with non-U.S. citizens and tax money proceeds that are withheld at closing. But that only has to do with foreign sellers. If you're a buyer, make sure that you understand whether the seller is a foreign seller or not, because oddly enough, when we're talking about FIRPTA, if the proper disclosures are not gotten and nothing happens, if the title company doesn't collect the 15% from foreign sellers, and if they don't have some kind of exemption, guess what? The buyer is on the hook for this. So make sure you understand completely what you're getting into. Make sure if you are dealing with a foreign seller that they understand what's going on, and you're not going to be obligated for their tax bill, which is an unusual law. It's actually a federal law, not a Florida law. So the other thing I'd like to cover with you is let's moving through the contract here to see other than mortgage is really probably the biggest thing here. Inspection periods are always a key issue, and we always recommend that you get a home inspection, and we always recommend title insurance, and even on new homes, we recommend getting a home inspection just to make sure that you're not buying a lemon. The big thing here on general property repairs is 10 days after receipt. So a little bit of a change in this contract. In the past, the seller would be obligated to provide, estimates or, obviously estimates and receipts. But now the seller can just repair, and then provide evidence that things have been repaired within 10 days of written notice of what needs to be repaired. Now, remember, this is the non-as-is contract FAR, which means that there are specific items within the contract that allow for the buyer to ask for non-cosmetic items to be repaired or replaced at a certain amount, which is all negotiated how much, right? You can negotiate how much will be repaired or not repaired. So in the event that you stick to this particular, the boilerplate version of this contract, which would be 1.5% of the purchase price on repair items. We're not talking about, we're just talking about home inspection repairs. We're not talking about, any kind of, municipal liens or wood destroying organisms. We're just talking about non-wood destroying organisms. We're just talking about the basic repairs. Maybe it's a roof or air conditioning, electrical, so on and so forth. Basically, what we're talking about here is that once you did, as a buyer, a home inspection, that home inspection would have a report, basically a summary report of, one item. Rarely is it zero. Sometimes it's 0 items, 5 items, 50 items, however many items that need to be repaired by the seller. Well, as soon as you deliver, or your representative, buyer's agent, delivers that report to the seller or listing agent, then the seller has 10 days after that notice or receipt of notice to repair or replace on the items on that list that you give them based on your home inspection. So they can actually just repair things at however they want to do it, or not however they want to do it. They do need to do it by licensed individual. Of course, it needs to be done properly. They could do it they could either repair it or replace it, or they can provide a list of estimates, and this is what it's going to cost us. So they can do either one as a seller. They can repair, replace, or provide a list of things that we're going to do and what those costs are going to be. They can do either one during that 10-day period. Now, at that point, the one thing I do want to bring up, because it's something that doesn't get mentioned a lot, but I think is really, really crucial. Okay, I'm going to stop share for a minute. Something that's really, really important when we're talking about inspection repairs, and we're talking about things that need to be done. We're talking about things that are non-cosmetic. We are also talking about, in this particular contract, that if the seller decides that they do not want to repair anything that is non-cosmetic, supposed to be fixed, let's say it's there's a roof leak and they don't want to fix it, then they can say, we're not going to fix it. But at that point, the buyer has the right to actually either accept that, or they can actually get out of the contract with legal rights to their escrow money. In the event that there's some things that the buyer is not comfortable with, but if the seller is comfortable repairing and replacing those things, then the buyer is obligated to stay in the deal. So some differences there. There's probably 7 or 8 major differences to this contract. The big things I wanted to bring to light are really the approval timelines and the notification timelines. Remember that everything in the contract is based on calendar dates, calendar time period, and time is of the essence. But if you have questions about this, I just wanted to bring to light that there are changes that have just come about in the Florida contract, whether you're buying in Marion County, Sumter, Lake, the Villages, Ocala, wherever, or anywhere else in Florida for that matter, that there are changes, and please connect with your real estate professional. If you have questions of me, by the way, you can also text me 352-572-3796, 352-572-3796. Also connect with us on our website, buysellthevillages.com, BUYSELL, thevillages.com. And please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. That way you can get notified anytime I'm doing something new on this particular channel. And if you have comments, please leave them as well. All right, take care, everybody.